money dictates fear more potently than anything else on earth, up to and including the threat slash promise of death itself. Hence why during the onset of the Great Depression a century ago, guys were more willing to jump off of high-rise ledges after losing their shirts in the markets rather than live destitute, because they would they would rather risk not knowing what the afterlife is than to live in shame against their cohorts, their families, their rivals, their colleagues, of not having performed well enough. So one of my core mandates in life, I believe the point of life is to kill fear, period. I mean, there's different types of fear. If there's a snake in front of you while you're hiking, you're going to have fight or flight fear. That's necessary fear for self-preservation. Any other sort of fear, fear I'm not hot enough, tall enough, rich enough, endowed enough, whatever it is, should be extinguished so that we could get to joy as much as possible. Every negative emotion, every negative trait for a person, lust, rage, envy, greed, fear, resentment, all of it is rooted in fear. So I think the core of this life is to, at the very least, identify the fears, if not extinguish them as much as possible. And for some reason, issues involving money, which is essentially should just be a tool, managed to, from wherever and from whatever power sources, serve as the core wrench for either individual fear dictation or collective fear dictation. Hence why odd stuff can be happening, and most people would know that there's something off about the current affairs or the global affairs, but they don't want to rock the boat at work. Yeah. They don't want to risk losing their relationship. They don't want to look, I'm just worried about my mortgage, my kid's karate class, looking over my back at work, meeting quotas, and just performing. I couldn't really have an effect on those type of things anyway, and then they tune out, all the while knowing deep down that kind of official stories or narratives are not necessarily accurate. And at some point, something's got to give, because if it, success isn't necessarily a quantitative issue, it's a qualitative issue. And the more you're able to live fearlessly, the more successful I think you are. And I don't think these are just kind of, pardon the pun, pie in the sky phrases or concepts that are too woo-woo or too idealistic. I think they can be applied on a daily basis. So I just chose a few issues, some of them more than likely redundant with what you guys have covered on the show before with excellent guests.
I think about that a lot. I think about that a lot. Like, if people hear a topic they already heard about, I think it's fine. I think people like to just hear this talk data, and if it's a good conversation, that's all they really care about. I mean, it's like comedy, right? People are like, oh, that's hacky, but it's like, it's life. Life is hacky, right? I mean, it's like if you're talking about your kids, you're talking about going to the airport, whatever it is, it's hacky. I really love what you said right there, and I think it's very important. In our last interview we did, he kind of mentioned as well how this real pushback against, for the longest time, against conspiracies, and the notion that something may be going on, right? And the reason why people don't want to engage in it, because there's a couple of reasons. One, they don't want to act like that they don't have a sense of understanding, and that they didn't see it happen, right? Like, they don't want to believe they can get something pulled over them. They want to think they're intelligent enough to see stuff. So if they didn't see it, they don't want to believe it, okay? They also don't want to know. They also don't want to believe they brought kids into this crazy-ass world. So they don't want to think about that. They also don't want to think about, is their livelihood going to be affected? Are they a part of the problem? Are they a part of the system that is doing everything? Because they're cashing checks, and they don't want to stop cashing checks. So I totally agree with you on that. I 100% agree with you. And then they also think it's exhausted. They rather just go listen to an hour of television and get told lies, comforting lies, and move on with their life. That's really all they want to do. They think what we do is hard work. And I tell them it's not. Once you understand basic playbooks, you understand what they're doing. You understand? Now, people like us love to keep going deeper and we love talking about it. But mostly, if you just understand powerful people conspire, okay,
Yeah.
that's all you need at that point. You go, hey, what's up with the vaccine? Powerful people conspire. Well, how does that play out? How does that manifest itself in a vaccine, in Syria, in 9/11, in the assassination of JFK? Powerful people conspire. How does that manifest itself? That's all you got to ask yourself, and that's it. So I agree with you, bud.
Yeah, it's become normalized. So, like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at this point is inarguably more or less part of, just by nature of his relationship with the incoming president or the second term of President Donald Trump. He's been above board, very outspoken over the past couple of years alone, over just being convinced that the narrative involving the assassination of both his father as well as his uncle JFK do not match what's in compulsory schooling's textbooks or the mainstream media's narrative over the past several decades. And to the point where it's covered, he's been interviewed on mainstream legacy corporate press stating as much. And it's more or less kind of, I think the zeitgeist accepts the sense that these are fibs that we grew up with and that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is correct and is vindicated. But again, it's just kind of left at that. It's okay. Yeah, that's, I guess you could go into a 8th grade classroom right now where it's standard to have civics lessons that require exams to then be able to go into high school, namely a constitution test or, president test or whatnot, and openly discuss these things. And it would be the very opposite of what exactly 40 years ago when I was in 8th grade, where if a teacher were to try and even hint, then that teacher at the very least would be called into the administration's office. You're not supposed to go off the syllabus or go off script. So it's this netherworld of mixed standards as far as facts and the means by which we go about them. But even with things established like, yes, the JFK or the RFK assassinations or Malcolm X or Martin Luther King, there's a civil case. I have the book, An Active State, by William Pepper, who was good friends with Martin Luther King and was his attorney. He published it years ago. He's the one who won the civil case against the U.S. government, showing that there was a conspiracy to take Dr. King out. And so that's been established and proven. It's now kind of codified law, certainly, than history. But everyone just kind of, okay, well, it's a given that, we have, whatever that they label it, the deep state or dark forces or black ops or this and that. I'm still going to go about just kind of, the civic duty is not to assert oneself in any political capacity beyond the vote or perhaps, marching in the streets against an imminent war or, signing somebody's pamphlet or urging for funds for something. It's the core civic duty is production and consumption. You're a good citizen if you contribute to the GDP, you meet your sales quotas, you try and get on that board, you impress your mentors, your colleagues. Ideally you're the envy of your colleagues, because we're conditioned in this culture to either pity people or envy people. Very little in between. That in between space is compassion. But compassion has been kind of rebranded as tinting at weakness. Whereas if you're either envying people or pitying people, then you fall somewhere within the conditioned grade of emotions for production and consumption. You pity them because they're not doing as well as they could be in your eyes, which really is psychological projection, because you don't want to be in that position that you're judging them by. Or you envy them because, gosh, as hard as I work, I still can't get this Tesla S model that John got across the street. What the heck's he doing? You're not going to be vocal about it, but it seeps into your subconscious and it wakes you up at 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm with you, dude.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So this is all fear conditioning, but fear, all of these other emotions that I listed prior. So, like for instance, greed. I was 16 when Wall Street came out by Oliver Stone, and it won Michael Douglas his acting Oscar. And why did it do so? In large part because of those catchphrases that became very emblematic and iconic at this point. Greed is good. Greed works. It was the screenwriter Stanley Weiser was former Wall Street, as well as Oliver Stone, whose late father Lou Stone was actually a Wall Street trader. Apparently lost his shirt, so there was resentment that resulted in making that film in part. But those guys knew the culture. They knew the Ivan Boskis, or they knew of the Ivan Boskis and others in the mid 80s who said things straight up like, greed is good, for lack of a better phrase. So what you saw on screen with that film came out of the headlines, and it touched a lot of nerves because of this, what the go-go 80s were, and that go-go 80s never ended, even with the '08 financial crisis and the 16, 17 years since then of chronic unemployment and high inflation. It's those standards were set. So what is greed is good? It was a revamping of what Ayn Rand and a post-Calvinistic culture stamped into the consciousness of a growing America industrially. And greed is fear. I traded commodities like 13, 14 years ago, hard asset precious metals. And our then trainer was is this veteran finance guy, but he also had like a Buddhist side. So in one of his training courses, he actually said, like, for our clients that we trade on these commodities, you're dealing with two emotions, either greed or fear. But I'll be honest with you guys, greed is fear. And that always kind of stuck out to me because he went off script for a little bit. He was older. He didn't have as much stakes in outcomes per se, so he tried to nuance the education. It kind of flew over the heads of the others in our class, but it stuck with me. And when you look at it, Ayn Rand, for instance, through The Fountainhead, through her novels, through becoming a semi kind of quasi-prophet figure for all of these supposed libertarians out there, what did she do hermetically? What did she do esoterically? What did she do magically or sorceress-wise, via sorcery? She took greed and flipped it from being a vice to a virtue, to the point where, yes, Atlas Shrugged. You're supposed to be a John D. Rockefeller or any of his offspring. You're supposed to be, in the current iteration, Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates. That's why these public billionaires, as I call them, are pushed in our faces on at this point hourly basis with their liquid, their paper net worths. Today it was announced with a photo of Musk about to shake hands with incoming President Trump that for the first time an individual has broken the $400 billion net worth metric or ceiling or whatever you want to call it. And I'm just chuckling at that because it's probably 5 to 10 guys sitting there transatlantically punching buttons on their keyboards in order to assign his net worth, if you will, and that of anyone else, in part to distract from the true power structure that's out there, trillionaires per se, those that are responsible for the very meaning of the currency itself.
You're so right, dude. You're so right.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter if Musk fell 120 billion this week because of this off-putting thing that he said, or because Tesla for this particular quarter didn't meet what its projections were or whatnot. It's the question. One of the shows I did for the Newsbud show was that the Forbes list or the Fortune or various Inc. or Wealth, these magazines that we grew up with that are right in our faces, just urging us that we're not working hard enough. They will list the annual billionaires lists, and they will then rank things. And rank people like, Musk here, Zuckerberg there, Gates there, Larry Ellison there, Bernard Arnault, these people, and maybe like at the head of this cosmetics conglomerate out of France here. But they're all, again, like they're the public faces to serve a couple of goals. First is to motivate the working masses, because you're supposed to, whether you're 17 studying for your SATs, or you are an MBA student at Columbia or Harvard or Chicago, Michigan, or Stanford, eager to make your mark when you get out of business school, or you're middle age and you're trying to, wonder about your legacy or whatever it is. It's always supposed to be a sense of like, why didn't I reach that pinnacle, or how can I reach that pinnacle? So it's a motivating force to constantly list public billionaires and assign their net worths in a horse race scenario. The other is just kind of tactical obfuscation. It is to further distance the public's consciousness away from the true mores of power, like the who is responsible for the definition of this person's net worth, let alone who's responsible for the meaning of money today. That we went off the gold standard 53 years ago, August 15th. And since then, so we went from a gold standard to a petrodollar standard just a couple of years or a few years after that, all in a way to kind of prop up trust in the currency, in the dollar itself as a post-Bretton Woods standard for the currency of record. After the British pound lost that status due to the world wars. There's certainly the Second World War, which depleted England of so much of resources as well as credibility to have the pound continue to be what it was. It transferred over to the muscle, namely the U.S. and its currency. Well, we're in the process of kind of transitioning out of that, in part because of $35 trillion in public debt.
No, I agree.
So how they do. What's that?
Yeah, I agree with you. Real quick, you're doing some great work. I just want to jump in real quick because I want to kind of digest something that you said. We're having some feedback, huh?
Yeah. I believe on you're in Pye. You have perhaps the speaker.
Do you have headphones at all, buddy?
I can keep. I've been trying to keep him muted while you're talking, but if you could put headphones in, that would solve the problem.
That'd be great.
I will put headphones on.
Oh,
thank you.
Thanks.
Join us in our headphones.
Yeah, as we fry our
boom. You look good, dude.
Yeah, don't remind us, Johnny. We're not.
Yeah. Radiation.
No, these are good headphones.
There's still electricity in.
I find everything you're saying correct. I know this was a couple minutes ago you talked about this, but this kind of rat race mentality is kind of, to me, how they trap you into it. I have people in my life, both named Jason, that have decided that the rat race is not how they're going to live their life.
Nah.
Now, I don't know how it's going to work out. It's an experiment to me. Unfortunately, I'm as old as one of them and a little older than the other one. I won't be able to benefit from what we learned from in their experiment. By the time we know, I'll be old and I'll be like, I should have done it that way and never tried. But so much of what our society and the influences they have on people and how they steer them really is about trapping you. There's so much is about trapping you. Now, I am somebody that thinks children are a gift, and that is what we're here to do, is have kids, and they are not a burden. A lot of people look at them like they're, I can't afford kids today. No, you find a way, okay? But like when we study how they treat doctors, right? Like they're always talking about cleaning up people's college debt, like forgiving their college loans. They never talk about medical school loans, ever. Because they need you to have that giant debt, so you go into whatever practice they want you to do, because that's where the money is. If you go outside of that practice, there's not a lot of money there at first because the system isn't set that way. Example, when you're a guy and you're going to college, and they're always like, it's 4-1, 4-1, women to men. It's great. You're like, okay, what does that say about us as a society? And then you hear the same at the same time statistic that women carry 75% of the debt. You're like, yeah, because how much of that is college? How much of that is college debt? And what happens when when you're done with college and you got hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans? What do you want to do? Get a job as quickly as you can. And the question is, what is that job? Is that your first choice? Probably not. But you need to start paying off these loans. You got to.
Wait up, doesn't that sound kind of like slavery?
In a weird way.
But then you tell them to stay home. That's slavery too. I'm like,
yeah, it's so crazy.
So dumb.
So anyways, they go and they get these jobs, and now they're making money. And now you start going, if I have kids, I can't make money. Now you start chasing. And it's all depopulation.
No, and they love that whole freeze your eggs.
Yeah.
Oh, freeze your every girl I know is gonna freeze her eggs. Oh, I'm gonna freeze my eggs. Oh my god. And it's not cheap either. So
it's expensive.
They've also ruined public higher education. So the affordable version of education, public higher education, they've ruined it. It's been infiltrated by liberal.
Well, they've created stupid ass degrees that get you no jobs. There's no practical.
Even on that point, stupid ass degrees. I was, first of all, over the past, I want to say 15 years, really kind of since the '08 financial crisis, and it's on YouTube. You will see videos of Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, who at this point is kind of like a weird right-hand guru to the incoming president, picked his vice presidential candidate, very influential, powerful billionaire with regard to macro policies and even global affairs, not just tech and all of that, but like these guys, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Scott Galloway, who's a tenured professor of marketing at NYU in their business school, the Stern Business School. They're above board and ripping higher education, public or private, as being this kind of velvet rope, ridiculous kind of the equivalent of the Catholic Church 500 years ago is what Peter Thiel, likens it to, because they sell their sense of exclusivity, and yet the economy is not what it was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, when, yes, you were required more or less to have a higher education degree in order to matriculate credibly into the workforce, and yes, you were more than likely to have a job and have certain types of returns, but coupled, multiple economic factors, inflation being a multiple of what the government states that it is, certainly since the '08 crisis, because of things like the price of high. I graduated from college 30 years ago, June, and what I was paying on a yearly basis to attend the University of California, that same institution, it's like anywhere from 3 to 5 times the cost to do so. Berkeley, which is technically theoretically a public school, is as if not more expensive than what private schools were charging back then when we were in college. So a lot of folks see the farce. It's not even necessarily a function of which degrees. So even if everybody was a STEM major, so your electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, aerospace, software engineering, computer science, biology, biochem, chemistry, mathematics, physics, even if, let's say, 98% of every college student out there, public or private, were a STEM major, you would still see this chronic level of unemployment. Hence why AI is being kind of shoehorned into the public's consciousness or subconscious, really, as a necessity because of almost an inbuilt chronic sense of unemployment approaching. So but we all grew up with that conditioning of you have to have a college degree, at least, 1 or 2 additional degrees in addition to that would really help you in addition. And yet, it's just kind of the blind leading the blind. There's a bit of punk rock narrative out there, and ironically from very powerful, wealthy people like Thiel and Musk and others, who are saying you don't even need a degree. You could, I criticize Musk routinely for a whole variety of purposes, but I completely agree with him on this point of when he says, learn to the problem or learn to the pain point or learn to the demand. So if you sense that there's a societal need or something that products or services are not adequately meeting. Then you learn the coding or the Python or the economics lesson or the finance in order to try and provide a solution, and then take it to folks whose business is to fund innovation. And I think that's the best of what we have in our economic system, is the ability to be able to innovate and ideally have like-minded folks help fund or shepherd along that innovation. Otherwise, everybody else is on a syllabus that is very long in the tooth and is inaccurate. And so, yes, if you have a liberal arts degree, that there's a bias against it amongst many employers. But then if you quiz those employers this way that I'm posing this, if you go to an employer, you go manager and say, what if every applicant on your LinkedIn source or to your website or whatever was a physics master's or PhD, or listed all these certificates for Tableau and Python and C++ and is just like a master coder? They would have to fess up at some point and saying, well, we wouldn't be able to accommodate because receipts, revenues are down, uncertainty is up. We don't know where our business or even our sector is going to be in a few years, and nobody is wanting to yearn to actually define what fundamentals are. So it begs the question of what an education really is. We need to go back to thousands of years ago in order to, like raw punk rock being Plato or Socrates, and just like think for the sake of thinking, like think critically, rigorously, offensively, pose things that will cause people to become uncomfortable and start to sweat because it's lurking in their subconscious and they know they should be questioning. You're basically pricking a bubble of fear through rhetoric. And in that sense, what you guys are doing on the show, what the best comics, who, as you well know, are philosophers, essentially just using a certain medium and a certain limited time frame to pose probing questions, are bringing us back to critical inquiry. So the Hickses, the Carlins, the early Pryors, very, very early Dennis Miller, guys that we grew up with that were thinkers, even Dennis Wolfberg back in the mid 80s or so. Like, it was funny, but you left the show or you turned off the TV and you're driving to work the next day thinking about the concept that they put forward. That is not being hacked, is a sense of, oh, there's humor lacing this issue that everybody needs, like Chris Rock's 96 special, where he differentiated between quote unquote black people and the N-word. It was a slap in the face.
Saved his career bit. That's how good that bit was. It saved his career.
And it would destroy his career now if he put it out.
No, he can still, black people can still say the M-word.
I don't know.
But I think that word is dying as well. I think people are just over it. But go back to what you're saying, because I find it to be very interesting in the fact that I 100% believe that everything is, the human animal is so great at adapting. I tell you, I think you're going to start seeing a lot more independent contractors. People just starting to build their own businesses.
In what field? What do you mean?
In like the entertainment industry?
Well, I mean, we're independent contractors, which I think is you're going to see a lot of people getting into. But maintenance,
like entrepreneurism,
yeah, like everything, like maintenance man.
Who are they contracting with? Like, what do you mean, like?
Well, they're independent contractors, meaning I would hire you to be a handyman at my house, house clean, all that stuff, making their own clothes, figuring out a way to sell their clothes on that. I think that is where it is going. Where I think people are realizing, and this obviously, some people go, not everybody can do that. I believe so. That we're just realizing that the corporate structure is not kind to humans in any way, and to invest 10 years into someone else's dreams with the ability just to fire you because a number, 1 or 0 didn't go your way, people are waking up to that. And I think that is the future.
It's funny. That used to be an anti-worker mindset, what you're saying there. people used to want to be with the company and get the
Right.
benefits and
Right,
retire
right,
and
right,
support a
right.
family. But I mean, they destroyed it. Yeah, those opportunities just aren't there anymore in that way.
Some people need structure. Some
Yeah.
people just want to go in
Yeah, that's
to an
right.
already established structure where they can go in, they can get, here's your job, do this, and they just do it. And I get that because that's the easiest thing to do.
And when
some-
you're off the clock, you're off the clock. That's the benefit of that.
That
too,
is
right?
it. So when you become an independent contractor, you're exchanging a 9-to-5 job for a 24/7 job. But you are your own boss and you get to call your own shots, call your own rates, all that stuff. And I do believe I think you're going to see more of that happening.
And I think it's because they kind of have to, though.
100%.
I think they kind of have to because a lot. I mean, and I
But
still,
I'm not even talking like you're going to see brick and mortar, but I even think that's going to go away to a point with some of this stuff. I think you're not going to see like John's Plumbing and John has an office space where you go and hey, it's John's Plumbing.
Why
Let's
would he
go
need
down.
that overhead? Yeah,
I think
completely
that's all
unnecessary.
going away. That's what my opinion is. But
Yeah,
Does it concern you
plumbers
that-
are making mid six figures. You know, it's like you have to ask, like, wait a minute. I thought I was conditioned to look down my nose at those type of blue collar work. Well, why are they making six figures? Because it's a standard supply and demand, just very basic Econ 101. There is a vast need for this sort of pipe work or this sort of, or we're redoing the house or we're doing a lot of tear down work in this society or in this new city or there's going to be this X need. And turns out the guys that weren't necessarily, or the girls that weren't glued to the syllabus and committed to kissing the ass of the teacher, but were kinetic, were scruffy, were very creative. They tend to have that part of their brain work where they are like investigative. They have their Columbo cap on. They go out and they hunt out what demand is there, what is a genuine demand. What is there a need for? What do people describe as a pain in the ass? To the point where they're like, you know what, I would part with money, take my money. It's become a trite phrase, take my money. But I would part with my money in order to have this resolved. And then they then hire consultants to figure out how much of their money would they part with, how can we scale that, and how can we go into business on our own. And that's where you have, plumbers making 500, 700 grand for incorporating and setting up their own brands, and not just plumbers, like any sort of like down and out in Beverly Hills from 39 years ago, the movie with Richard Dreyfuss and Nick Nolte. If you recall, one of the subtexts of the plot was that Dreyfuss, being this wealthy resident of Beverly Hills, how was he wealthy? He was in the coat hanger business. It was like purposefully, tactically chosen as a boring business, and yet that's how Beverly Hills still is. That's how Bel Air still is. If you were legally able to go door to door knocking in Northwest LA or Brentwood and ask, excuse me, I don't want to probe. I'm just like doing research for my own sake and for students. Whether you're self-made or your legacy wealth, having passed down 2 or 3 generations, in what business, if I may ask, was your family wealth made? They're going to say just like, this type of boring thing or that. It's like the excitement that we're conditioned with wasn't necessarily, it's like, but like people don't think that they're cut out for it, or they think that they'll be, blue in the face from boredom. I tell you, you're not as bored when you are capable of being able to take care of folks and then give to causes and give in a way like Elvis just buying Cadillacs for random folks on the street type of thing, based on you're hitting it out of the park more than once. In large part because of boring businesses. I'm rambling.
You know what show I love? I know it's kind of fake and it's reality TV, but Shark Tank. I love watching Shark Tank. These family shows up and they give you this idea. Sometimes they cry, sometimes I cry. But it's through an entrepreneur. But you still kind of admit that they went to they found something that we needed. Where sometimes I'm like, yo, we needed that, and they get it.
What is the market? What does it need? I love that, and I do think that's super important. So I want to get into some of the stuff you wanted to talk about, too, about the masters of mankind, Who are the masters of mankind? But before we get into that, I want to ask you, do you feel it's inevitable? Do you feel whatever the plan is inevitable? Do you feel that we as a whole, and I do feel, we kind of talked about this on the last episode, but I really do feel that there is a waking up going, that there is let's take this this dentist guy who was on trial do you guys know his name? The dentist guy that was on trial in New York City for choking that guy, put him in a rear naked choke because he's threatening to hurt and kill people. Yelling, I don't want to go, I'm not afraid to go to jail.
Daniel Penny?
Danny Penny. There we go. Danny Penny. There we go. Thank you. And he was acquitted. And it seems like everyone but this small group of people that used to be a large group of people, or a loud voice, which was BLM, everyone's going, this makes common sense. Everybody on the train was like, he saved us, including other black people, that this guy was going to get violent with people. He was yelling about getting violent people. He saved us. Now, this guy who he choked out, who his father, who abandoned him as a child, is now like trying to sue because he says he's lost, he misses his son while he abandoned him.
He robbed me of my ability to make up with my son, whose childhood
100%. And so now even people are calling him out, which you wouldn't seen 4 years ago.
No, I think you're right.
So my question becomes like, do you think that the globalists, the mass of mankind, do you think their plan is inevitable?
Yes and no. I'm going to be just very honest. Like I'm just, just some guy, quote unquote. I am one of you. I'm one of the many masses of kind of certainly Gen X, early 50s, trying to make sense of things, trying to weigh really the past 25 years alone, just the past 25 years of events, global events, current events, economic events, certainly health events, against the prior 20-something years of conditioning, whether through schooling, through media, through family, through society, and just wondering why there's such a dichotomy. The most punk rock thing that I could do is read and be alone and contemplate and think. Again, going back to the time of the classics where most people are too afraid to just sit in silence. They have to have some sort of stimulus. I'm trying to condition myself to be as such and to sit and condition my attention span towards reading quite a bit of a book, and a book that is not superfluous but is viscous and difficult on multiple different subjects. And I say that yes and no to your question because I am not fully qualified as either an esotericist or a hermeticist yet to be able to say absolutely it is inevitable because of X, Y, and Z, or no, it cannot be because of this scripture or because of this. Now, that's not a slight against the religious or the evangelicals or by the book folks within any religion at this point, whether they go by the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, Eastern mysticism or whatever. I'm a student and I'm wanting to weigh things with critical capacity, knowing that the conscious mind, what is the conscious mind? My conscious mind knows that I'm on a show right now. It's dusk. I have headsets on, whereas I didn't half an hour ago. These are conscious things, conscious awareness. The subconscious mind doesn't know time and space. When you're in REM sleep is when it's at its go level. That's why you have pink elephants or your third grade teacher being mean to you or this chick saying no. Like the subconscious mind is purposefully random because it is an entire eternity, a seabed of other things that lurk with the reality of most of our lives. That subconscious mind dictates our habits and trying to get to a subconscious awareness of things, not just for self-enlightenment, but to be able to answer your question much better. That's a little long-winded, but I'm trying to be above
It's
board and
fine.
honest. And
It's